there's this equanimity, and there's a single pointedness that starts to arise. And these are the hallmarks of these deeper layers of absorption as we start to loosen the bonds of the conditioned self. As we start to experience this energy, it can get very sticky because it is so blissful. It's very, very difficult for the conditioned mind when we have a beautiful, blissful experience happening. And often on my own path, when this happened in my practice, I started reading about the chakras and about energy and learning about all these concepts and what should be unfolding. And really that can just become a trap for the mind. If the mind has some concept about what should be unfolding, if we read about these chakras and it's like we hear somebody else's experience, because all of these experiences come from yogis who they're just conveying their own experience. And it doesn't mean it's going to be the same as your experience. So sometimes we'll hear their experience and we'll think, oh, my experience, it isn't that. I need to be experiencing what that person was describing, or what was in the Upanishads, or what was in the Bhagavad Gita. I need to find that unfolding phenomena in myself. And as soon as we have a concept about it, then that mediator is alive again. So we gave up, that little seeker, that doer, in order to produce this energy. But then, it's sneaky. It comes in the back door again. It can find another way to get a hold of our practice. So we even have to let go of the knowing around all of this phenomena. So, for me, there's a quote I love from Ramakrishna, and this is one of my favorite ones. He says, really only two types of people can awaken: those who are not burdened in the first place by conceptual thinking. So people who haven't really gone down the road of the intellect, which those people tend to be fairly rare in our society. And then there's those who they've gone down that road. They've become a seeker, and they've looked at every sutra and practiced every technique, and still they, what they've realized is impermanent. They still haven't found what will bring lasting peace. So those people, eventually on the path, they come to realize that they know nothing with that conditioned mind, or that the mind has to become a don't know mind. So after studying everything, after practicing everything, eventually that conditioned mind has to give up. It has to learn its place in this whole process. So today, when we go into the practice, when I say, and this is what I repeat over and over in the self-inquiry process, when I say, intend to directly experience your true nature, if that conditioned mind moves to do something when I say that, so if I say, intend to directly experience your true nature, and then that conditioned mind moves, tries to do something, it tries to look for something, then that means it hasn't given up that seeking. It hasn't given up that belief that there's something for it to do. So that seeker has to give up. It has to stop. And that's really the one thing, the only thing in this entire self-inquiry practice that the mind has to learn. And it is something that the mind needs to understand or learn, is its own place in this process. It needs to give up, needs to stop seeking and realize that it isn't the tool It's a useful tool for a million other things, but for finding out the truth of who you are, it's not a useful tool. It will never get it, because what we want is a direct experience.